Get ready for Lurtech party time. Excellent. Yeah. That didn't work. Work better. Wait. Lurtech party time. Excellent. And that is the kind of extremely bug-free tech you could expect for the next hour or so. Hey everybody, welcome to Lurtech, which is an extremely extremely infrequent stream where I talk about some of the things that are sort of behind the scenes making the system work here at Bionic Trousers Incorporated, Loading Ready Run Heavy Industries, however you want to do it. Today I'm going to be talking about the what I call Nifty crop mover, or the crop moving utility. I might go into some other stuff as well, but that's the main part that I want to talk about today. Because I figured this is sort of like there's lots of different things that different little widgets and things that we use, but this is one that is something that I think is very useful, and it's something that's sort of a self-contained component. A lot of the stuff here, part of the reason why I don't it's difficult, like I like the idea of spreading the technology or the systems that I've developed, and letting access to other people, and showing people what's available and ideas for what they could maybe do for their own thing. And then obviously the whole open source thing where that kind of feeds into stuff, because Lord knows I've used tons and tons of open source things, including OBS, which is a really amazing open source program. So I like to feed back into that, but it's something that I haven't done as much as I would like to. And part of that is, part of that is just because it takes a lot of time. It takes time to sort of get things in order and that kind of stuff. But the other part of it is that it takes a lot of the stuff that we do use here for Loading Ready Run streams and stuff is heavily customized to our particular streaming situation, which it may not surprise you to know is somewhat unique. And it wouldn't, and not only that, but it's also a lot of the pieces kind of fit together in a way that I can't sort of extract them easily. So like, I have, there's various things that we use that I have various fancy overlays and stuff that you would have seen on things that, and that have little controller things. You may have seen on AFK or Finite Paper Fight, little controller things on an iPad that allow people to like change their life totals and that kind of stuff. And so over the 5 years or something that we've been doing streaming stuff, I've built various overlay things, which is something that I do want to sort of make, disseminate more, and make sort of available to people. But the problem is that it all is kind of integrated into a bunch of other stuff that we do, and the sort of disconnecting that becomes very difficult. So it's sort of dependent on having a back-end server that I set up running, and that back-end server also has a bunch of code in it for like accessing the ATEM system and accessing the Twitter stuff and accessing a bunch of other things. Like it's it's all kind of integrated together. So extracting one portion of it to be kind of a self-contained piece that would actually be useful to other people that aren't doing exactly what we're doing becomes more difficult. But this is one piece that is more or less independent, and it's something that I think personally is very useful, and it falls under the umbrella of utilities that I have made over the years that are things that I think should just be a feature of the program. And so it's one of these things where like I'm making it in kind of a roundabout hacky way. It would be much better if this was integrated directly into OBS. But it isn't, at least for the moment. And so this is something that I've set up to enable this functionality that I think is really important. But I guess the people making OBS don't think is as important. And so part of that is I don't you do what you know, right? You use what you know. If all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, all those kind of things. I am not a C developer. I'm not I don't sort of work in that area. Obviously, I come from a web design background, web development background. And so JavaScript is where my sort of my area of expertise, my area of comfort is, and so that's where I work, and thankfully there is a system that was previously a plugin for OBS, but now is actually integrated directly. It's actually built into the newer versions of OBS. I think as of OBS 28, there's a system called OBS WebSocket, which is basically a WebSocket interface. If you don't, WebSocket is sort of an HTTP, like a web server sort of thing, that allows connection and control of the OBS program from an external system. So, and that external system can be, and the nice thing about WebSockets is lots of different things can access WebSockets, and there are libraries for OBS WebSocket for JavaScript and for Java and for C and Python and Ruby and Go and whatever other programming languages you want. Anything can really access, anything that can send HTTP requests can access WebSockets. So it's a very compatible thing. The wires coming out of the headset are Batty from Fern Gully. Yeah. Maybe these wires are a little long. For those of you who don't know why these wires are here, that was a repair thing that Ian did over on Tinker Tailor Solder Fry. So anyway, let me tell you about Nifty Crop Mover. Now, some of you who may be longtime viewers, just before I go, maybe longtime viewers of the Loading Rain Run channel, in particular the LRR thing, may remember me talking about this. I think I was looking at a thing 4 or 5 years ago, which also may have been the last LRR I did. And that's because this is a system that I have used, that I have built various versions of for a long time. Now, the version that I showed off 4 or 5 years ago was for XSplit. And for those of you who don't know, XSplit is another video streaming software like OBS, and it's what we used here in the office actually, up until basically the pandemic, up until about 2 or 3 years ago. We were using XSplit here in the office, and then we made the switch over to OBS. Unfortunately, XSplit has a lot of functionality that's really nice. I shouldn't say had a bunch of, but it has a bunch of functionality that's really nice. And for a while, it had a lot of features that OBS didn't have, that were very useful. Unfortunately, XSplit has been somewhat stagnant in its development over the last couple of years. Like, for instance, one of the things I really liked about XSplit is that it had a really strong plugin interface, and kind of like OBS WebSocket, but actually even better. It was actually like directly integrated. It wasn't a WebSocket thing. It was actually like a built-in JavaScript library in XSplit, and you could directly access all sorts of functions within XSplit. It was really neat. But time went on, new functions were added to XSplit that weren't available in the JavaScript library. The version of embedded browser sources that you can put into XSplit hasn't been updated. Maybe it's been updated now, but at least about a year ago or so, it hadn't been updated for a very long time. So it was anything that you tried to run in XSplit was running on Chrome version from 6 or 7 years ago, to the extent that some websites just stopped working and things. So that's unfortunate. So we made the transition, and during this time, obviously OBS has been continually updating and adding. They've added a bunch of features that were some of the things that I originally, some of the reasons why I originally chose XSplit. Features were added to OBS over time that brought it into mostly feature parity, and then farther along. There's still certain aspects of OBS that or XSplit that I liked better than what OBS does, and I wish that they would, integrate things or set things up in a little bit differently. But whatever the case, it's OBS is what we're on now, and so this Nifty Crop Mover system that I built for XSplit, and I talked about in the last in the LRR, I had to rebuild for OBS, because it turns out that XSplit and OBS have a completely different coordinate system for how they layout system for how they address objects on the canvas, which is always fun. So you have to get really deep into when you're working on something like this. You have to try to get into the nitty gritty of how how the program kind of internally represents objects, which can be a little bit awkward. Yeah. XSplit does an interesting thing where everything is represented in percentages, like percentages of the canvas size, which is kind of which is weird, but is kind of kind of cool, because it means that you can, like, you know, have a project set at 1080p and then change it to 4K, and it will look exactly the same because it all just will scale perfectly, which is kind of neat. But it does make other things awkward. Anyway, so let's look at. All right, you don't need me to be huge here. So let's look at crop mover. So I'm on. This is a screen capture of the gaming PC with OBS running, because obviously I'm streaming from OBS right now on the streaming PC, but OBS can't see. Well, I don't want to screen capture myself, otherwise it'll like do the infinite repeating thing. So so luckily we have a dual computer streaming setup here. So say this is a situation that comes up very often for us here, and most recently yesterday, in fact, the last stream that came on stream. So, you know, we're doing LRMTG or Friday Night Paper Fight, and you know, you've got an inset image of somebody, of a player up in the corner. But of course, players, people move around, or you know, you have you know, Graham is playing and then Kathleen is playing. Kathleen is a lot shorter than Graham, and so you have to move them. You have to move the crop around somebody, and so, you know, if you're you know, if you're somebody who does you know, a reasonable amount of streaming, I can imagine that you probably encountered this before, and you'd be like, okay, so I need to, you know, I want to move this over so that a different person, a different crop here. This is just a screenshot from a Going Online tweet, I think, from old Checkpoint or Chillpoint or something. So yeah, so I think, so if I want Heather instead of myself here, I can go shunk. Hey, there's Heather. And then I can go, whoop, you know, I can crop it in on Heather. And then, of course, I got to move it back to where it was before. Or say I want to get a tighter crop. You know, I can go in tighter. But then if I want to fit it back into where it was before, I've got to enlarge it again, right? And unfortunately, that's sort of, you're kind of stuck with that. And so that's where the Nifty crop mover comes in. And I've this is just a little what I call a utility, a web. It's a web page is what it is, but it's sort of a web app. And one of the neat things, one of the more recent changes in OBS is that they allow custom browser docks. So basically, you can have little web-based widgets that you know, become a dock in. Well, that doesn't work very well there, but you know, you can have a dock in OBS. In this case, it works better as an overlay. So how this works is I can now. So if I click on this object, you can see I've got a little representation of the canvas here, with the green square being what is the actual dimension, the frame that of that's currently visible, and then the gray box is that actual object, everything that is outside of that frame. And so now I can just drag that around. If I want my face, or I want sneaky beige, or I want nothing. And so you can see the important part about this is that the dimensions of this object on the canvas stay exactly the same regardless of how I move it around. And then I can also scale it, so I can zoom it in, or zoom it out, I should say. So I'm making the object smaller, or in relation to the frame. And so now it's like this. And so, I mean, like I said, we use this almost all the time on various loading rerun streams, especially over in Studio C. Or when I'm doing remote streams from home, or Studio P as I call it. We'll have everybody coming in. In fact, like this, like what this is taking what this screenshot was from. A remote stream where I have everybody within these little frames. Obviously everyone is has their own webcam and everything, and people might be coming in, they might be sitting closer or farther away from their webcams and stuff, and you want to make sure that they are roughly equivalent in size, right? So now I can also just, if I want to change the size. So the idea behind this is that whatever you do within the Nifty crop mover, the actual frame, the actual size of the object on the canvas never changes. So I can move it around like this. I can scale it up and down. The actual size of it on the canvas never changes. I have to, if I move it around on the canvas, of course, it changes. Or if I scale it or change this. One of the neat things that I've been able to do here is that previously the XSplit system wasn't advanced enough, or didn't have the capability to actually monitor the so that these can actually stay in sync. I can actually, as I move this, the preview in the Nifty crop mover also moves, which is quite nice. Before it, you had to sort of click off and then click again to update the crop mover thing. I do have it set so you can see right up here. It shows the percentage, like how big this object, how big the the zoom of this is. So if I zoom this in past 100%, it goes red like that, indicating that the quality, may be diminished now, because we've zoomed it in farther, more than 100%. This is especially useful, like in Studio C, we have we've got our overhead camera that we use for gameplay and stuff, and it's a 4K camera, and even though we're broadcasting at 1080p, we have a 4K camera overhead, because it means that I can, we can zoom in on the image on that 4K camera and have, you know, multiple crops and, you know, have a wide and a close and different things like that without compromising the quality. So I know that, like, if I bring in the 4K video and make it 1080p, I know that that's a 50% size, right? Yeah, in you know, the analogy that I think of with this, because I come from a you know, I've done a lot of sort of graphic design stuff, is in Illustrator or InDesign. That's why I think of it in terms of frames and like objects and frames. So like in InDesign, you can click on something, you can double click on something, and it will give you access to the sort of object inside that thing, and you can move that around independently from the frame that it's in. Obviously, yeah, and like OBS doesn't really have a sort of a representation of that, so you sort of have to generate that itself. Yeah, viewports, sometimes it's used as, well, viewport is a little different, but anyway. A couple other features that I have, you can see here, like if I want this bigger, whoop, you can see now the object is much larger than my little preview thing here, to the extent that I can't actually, you know, scale it anymore because I can't see the sides. I'd have to be like, I need the side. And so I can zoom out on here so I can get closer to it. Or zoom in. Also something that something that I have learned over the course of working on this is this thing is very much hitting the limits of my geometry knowledge, you know, going back to what I, you know, remembering about learning geometry equations in high school, and trying to keep that in mind. So and trying to, you know, figure out how things should move, you know, because of course what I'm doing is I am, you know, I can make all the adjustments on here, and then I have to take those measurements and then apply them to this object in OBS. So I have to take, you know, again, you know, we're talking about the pixel, you know, the way that things are represented. Things are represented in HTML and CSS and the document object model differently than they're represented in OBS. And so you have to, so I have to take the measurements of this, you know, this outer square and this inner square and the canvas, and then translate them, you know, scale them properly so that, you know, this canvas is 1920 by 1080, and then scale it and figure it out. So one of the things that took me an inordinately long time to figure out, and through much trial and error, is I can center scale this. And, you know, trying to figure out, it's like, okay, if you want to do center scaling and it's like this, you have to, you know, there's various decisions you have to make. Like if it's center scaled and it's like this, how should it move, you know, when you reach the edge? Which is always kind of frustrating, or it's kind of weird to run into these questions and be like, what's the intuitive answer? And so, you know, you can scale it up and down. And then, the other thing, I've got, this thing that shows the percentage is actually a field you can type into. So I can say I want this to be 90%, and it will scale it. Again, once I figured out how to center scale it, then I could figure out how to, then that allowed me to use this to make a thing that I could actually set the scale to what I want in a useful way. 200. So that means that if I've got 3 different video sources or images or whatever, I can make sure that they're all exactly 200% or 100% or whatever. These and then I made these little buttons that it's like scale it to 100% or scale it to its frame. So, scale it to its frame will make it as small as possible while still staying inside its frame. Because you really, both XSplit and OBS get very, very confused and angry if you attempt to scale a thing down smaller than if the object becomes smaller than the space that it's supposed to be in. The API allows you to do that. You should not do that. So, I mean, I very quickly found out that, that was weird. That should not have been possible. I very quickly found out that, it doesn't, that like a scroll, or a, dragging a box around, there's lots of little widgets to do that in, that's a pretty common design archetype in HTML apps or JavaScript and stuff. There's various little widgets and things that people have made that you can kind of drop in to make a particular box draggable. And even there's lots of things that people have made so that you can have a box that's draggable within a certain frame, so that like you can't drag it outside the frame. But as far as I could tell, this instance where it's sort of an inside out block, right? I don't want it to go within the internal box. I want to make sure that it can't go within this internal box. Is not a use case that seems to be very common. So I had to come up with the methodology for how to do that myself. Again, it's probably not the most efficient way of doing this, but I figured out a way to do it. I'm giving a lot of qualifiers for this because in case it wasn't, in case I wasn't clear, I'm releasing the code for this online, and I'll show you that in a sec on my GitHub page so that other people can download it and give it a try. And I just want to keep your expectations in line. It works for me, and that's what was important. Other features. So obviously this representation of the canvas is smaller than this one. And so as I move this around, it's not that precise. So as well as shift to move to do it from the center, I also have control turns on precision dragging, which basically drags it at 1-to-1 pixel ratio rather than at the sort of scaled pixel ratio. So that you can move things around in a more precise way. And then the other thing is down here. That's interesting. I have this actually just is a list of all the objects in this particular scene collection, which is what OBS calls these like a presentation. So if I if I make a new source, then, and I can hit the little refresh button there, then I can do these two. So what's really useful about that is that I can, if I've got another scene, I can be on this scene and I go, oh wait, I need to change the, I can be, if I open up a projector of that scene so we can see what's going on it. I can be broadcasting this scene. And you can go to studio mode and change things that way. But you can also, I could be broadcasting this scene, and I can manually choose one here and be adjusting it over here without actually having to switch to it, which can be useful in certain circumstances. We use that all the time for again for like Friday Night Paper Fight when I'm on a commercial break. The guys will sit down and get ready for a game, and I can throw up the preview of what the gameplay will look like and adjust their cameras and everything while we're still on commercial break. So yeah, this shows all the objects on all the scenes. Like if I make another object here, let's have a color source. Let's have another color source. And I can refresh the little thing here. Just refreshes this list. So we've got the scene and then the color sources. And if these are in a group, then it will show that they're in the group, which is kind of fun. So one of the things that can be a little awkward is you can see here, like if I have hello selected. So this is a very useful thing, but it's fundamentally kind of, it is a little bit of a hacky setup, right? It's something that could be done natively in OBS, better and more efficiently and everything. And one of the things that we run into is that, like, so I have hello selected, go into this scene, I have group selected, and then I could select one of these sources, and you see that is selected there. If I switch over this scene, hello is still selected on this scene, but the crop mover hasn't updated itself, the crop mover doesn't, or the how the WebSocket system works is it doesn't actually, I can't actually ask it what items are currently selected right now, which is very frustrating. All I can do is I can know when an event when an item is selected, and then change in reference to that, but there's no way to get the currently selected items. Just a subtle difference, but a very annoying one that occasionally creates certain amounts of weirdness. So, like I said, this is something that I am making available for use. Now, I previously, the other version of it, the one that worked on XSplit, I also made available publicly. I don't know if anybody actually looked at it or used it, because XSplit is obviously a less popular streaming program. So that was previously available on my GitHub. I've renamed that one to Nifty Nifty Crop Mover XSplit. And to be honest, it's possible that one doesn't it might not work anymore, because I don't know. I haven't actually tested it. XSplit has updated a couple times since then, and I don't know what the state of their API is. And I don't really care, because I don't use it anymore. But if you use XSplit, you're welcome to download that and give it a shot. So I've renamed that one Nifty Crop Mover XSplit. Now Nifty Crop Mover on my GitHub is this one. Nifty github.com/Paul LRR Paul-LRR Nifty Crop Mover. Accountant made for ants is it was saying that there's pan and crop a source. It's some OBS does have a way an idea tracking thing. People can make suggestions and stuff, and people have. This is not. I'm not the only one who's ever thought of this as a problem, but so far at least there hasn't been things. So hopefully people who find this as a problem, maybe they'll be able to download this thing help. So just to quickly go over this, it's pretty straightforward. This is just shows how it works and this kind of stuff. It has installation instructions and the various features that I've talked about. To actually use it on your own thing, you can either clone this repo if you're into Git, if you've got Git working and everything. But the easier way to do it is you can just go download the zip of this repo, and then you can make sure your website, as long as your WebSocket server is running, there's a little check box you have to hit to make sure that's running. Then you can add this as your browser doc. And here, let me actually go through the, go through the whole process. Why not? That's what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a Q&A stream or a demo stream. All right. Yes, a native implementation would have to be written in C and C++. And there are obviously a bunch of considerations, some of which I've handled on my end, which I'll get into actually in a sec. So if I download that, I've got the crop mover here. I can extract it. And it's just a couple of files here, including the README and things. You can just open this from here. It doesn't. The adding it as a doc in OBS is a little cleaner, but it does. There isn't anything special about adding it as a doc. It's just an HTML file. So then you can. Go in here. You need to put in your the WebSocket server and password, which you'll find in the WebSocket server settings. There's a server thing, password. Let me just switch over here so I can copy this. And then I've logged in. And then, you can do all the stuff that it can do. So right now you can see that this is just a window, a Chrome window, and browser docs in OBS are just Chromium. It's called Chromium, which is the sort of it's kind of the open source engine of Chrome. So you can embed basically the same thing as this, but it'll just be embedded as a OBS widget. Now, I was going to say some of the interesting things, just for interest's sake, this is one of those things that is like, you kind of start on the project and it doesn't seem like it'll be that hard to do, and then you do start to find various, shall we say, not even corner cases, but different things. So obviously one of the things that often comes up is rotating an object. So you want to make sure that it works when an object is rotated, which means you have to do some calculations on that, or you have to do it when it's if it's not rotated at 90 degrees is also fun, Ooh. Haven't figured out how to make the scale arrows face the right way when you have a rotated object. I don't know if I don't think that's a thing I don't think that's a feature of HTML. You have to sort of choose the direction that the scale arrows are. It would be difficult. I guess you could probably choose the closest one of the different directions that is most appropriate, but I don't care. The other thing that you can do in OBS, of course, is you can change the alignment of objects, and so that caused some confusion for me when I first set that up. You almost always want to be aligning things to the top left, but sometimes there's various reasons why you might not want to. So I actually have a thing that basically just translates whatever positional alignment it is to top left. That way I can be assured that I can do all the measurements from the top left in this thing and then just translate them back. And then the other one is, so this is one of these interesting things that you sort of figure out getting into the nitty gritty here. You figure out as you delve into what the internal representation of the transformations on an object is in various programs. So I've got, let me uncrop this. So I've got my object here. And you can see here's the transform thing. The size is 1920 by 1080, and its cropping is 0,0,0,0. Obviously, it's not cropped. If I go like this and I crop it, you can see that the cropping has changed now. Now it's been cropped left and right, which makes sense. If I then scale this down, notice this. So as I scale this, the size changes, but notice the left and right crop doesn't change. So what's interesting here, so OBS stores the dimensions of an object. It stores what's called the native resolution of the object, so what it is at 100%. It stores the scale of an object, so what percentage it's scaled, which notably is not anywhere in the transforms thing. And that is an internal number that isn't actually shown on the that isn't actually shown in the UI. And then it stores the cropping, the left, right, top, and bottom cropping. But the cropping is relative to its native size, right? So the cropping is, it basically crops it first and then scales it. So if I've got an object like this, and like if I've got something like this, in order for me to figure out what the how much it should be, like how much it is actually cropped in this view, like in reference to the scale thing, I have to figure out how much it's scaled by, and then make sure that all the cropping is measured by the same amount that it is scaled by. The cropping itself is scaled, and then apply those scales to the ratio that of this canvas to this canvas, which can be a little bit frustrating. And so as I said, I'm very into open source as a concept. I think it's an important part of our collective technology advancement, and I think there's lots of things that lots of open source stuff I use, and I want to contribute back into that thing. But there's also shall we say a selfish part of this, in that maybe somebody out there can improve my stuff and make it better. I mean, a great example of that that has happened to me personally is the the Nifty chat monitor, which is I think I did a lure tech about that many years ago. If you don't know, the main chat monitor that we use for stuff in Studio C, and also for Desert Bus and for lots of other things. And I developed a special script that would take the Twitch chat and reformat it and change it around, change the text colors, change a bunch of other stuff, make it so that it rotates top to bottom, or new posts, new messages are at the top, all this kind of stuff. And it worked reasonably well for a while. But because it was based on taking the real Twitch chat and modifying it on the fly, it was kind of brittle, because Twitch changes things every once in a while for no reason, or for reasons that are not clear. And so a little while, after messing around with it and it breaking and then trying to fix it and then it breaking and then having discussions with various forum members and stuff, Glodnox in the chat, who is currently in the chat and is an awesome member of our community, developed his own version of it, using a completely different way of accessing the Twitch chat, using a sort of directly accessing it via API, instead of trying to reformat the actual HTML that Twitch was generating, which is a far better way of doing it. And what I love about it was basically the ideal situation for me, because I made a version of it which had all the stuff that I needed but didn't work that great. And then Glodnox basically took that and made a much better version of it, but using sort of my initial thing as almost the the design spec, I guess, for it, which means that the Glodnox's version was just like had all the stuff that I wanted, because that was what was in my version, but was better. So awesome that is a very successful, from my perspective, open source endeavor. And by the same token, there's some aspects of this that I think could be improved. One of them is now I've talked about that there's a lot of translation that goes on between, I've got to take all the measurements of this object here, of the object in this HTML document, which has its own coordinate system, and it's scaled to a particular size. I have to take all the measurements and then translate them into the OBS coordinate system, and also obviously scale them to the right size, which I can do, but there's a question of precision. Both JavaScript and OBS round values in certain ways that are not entirely clear to me, and sometimes and so you might need to, and maybe I need to know more about, one would need to know more about sort of the internals of OBS in terms of how it rounds values, when you're moving things around and scaling things, what sort of level of precision it uses in terms of decimal places and this kind of stuff. Floating point rounding is a real mess. So let me demonstrate this by, if I just make a color source, and let me make this sort of a border, and then There you go. Sort of make that a border. There's better ways of doing that, but here we go. And then I'm going to go to more than 100. So I'm going to zoom all the way in on this here into my canvas. And let me get a section that I can actually see better. So as I'm moving this around, you know, I want to, you know, I want the frame to be exactly in the same spot while while the internal object moves. And that's the case most of the time, but what's a good demonstration of it? You will see that as I'm scaling this, especially if I'm doing the center scale, it's the line representing its edge is moving in and out. And to the extent that sometimes it's, you know, if I mean, if I scale this down even, like, notice this is scaling by 1 pixel increments here, right? And so if you wanted a really thin border around something, and then I have this, you know, scaling the object, you can see that in certain circumstances, this is actually going better than it does normally. In certain circumstances, it will, the frame will move in a way that is not predictable. And that is annoying. And so perhaps there's somebody out there who knows more about how OBS does rounding. Can come up with a better solution for that, or they'll look into my code and be like, what the hell are you doing? So yeah, I mean, it's I'm sure there are inefficiencies in the way that I'm doing the math that could be improved. So feel free to, you know, message me or, you know, open a ticket or an issue on the GitHub thing, or hey, even, you know, actually put a PR in if you've got a solution to the problem. That would be even better. Another thing that actually, I mean, this isn't necessarily an issue, a problem. This is actually more curiosity, out of curiosity on my end. The way I set this up, I am, you know, this system uses various libraries. I can show you the code here quickly. I'm using, you know, a Google icon font. I'm using Vue. This is Vue, the JavaScript framework, which is great. I love it. And I'm using Lodash for a couple of functions and different things like that. And at the moment, I'm, and of course I'm using the OBS WebSocket. And at the moment, I'm just embedding those, I'm just dynamically inserting those from their various sources. not I'm not I don't have a local version of those in like the JavaScript folder or whatever, which does mean that this will stop working if your computer doesn't have internet access. I don't consider that an issue because if you're streaming, you have to have internet access, so it's never been a big concern of mine. But I don't know, it's probably not best practice to do it that way. I mean, theoretically, this whole thing could be simplified. You know, it could be sort of compiled down into everything being embedded in the one index file. Yeah, it could be all bundled together. I'm gonna level with you. One of the things, if you are, you know, a reasonably experienced JavaScript programmer, and you look at my stuff here, one of the things that you may that will probably become apparent is that I really hate JavaScript bundling and avoid it whenever possible. I really hate transpiling and any that whole JavaScript tool chain. I find very frustrating, and I avoid it as much as possible. Because it just does not work the way it makes things not work the way I want them to work, and it makes it very difficult to, you know, when I often am working between you know, 2 or 3 or sometimes 5 or 6 different computers, both here at the office and at home and at different places, and having things that I build not work or not be able to be changed until I install a whole tool chain on the computer is very frustrating to me. The other and then the other aspect that will become apparent if you hang out and or if you watch this repo at all or look at any of the other repos is I am not good at Git. I have I don't know how to use it very well, and again I find it frustrating, and it doesn't fit with my current workflow or the workflow that I've sort of built up over the last 15 years, and so I find it difficult to reconcile those two things. Git is great, you know, obviously I use it in terms of getting things from other people, and it seems to work well for distributing stuff, but and I have, you know, I fully understand and admit that it's probably a good way to go, and I have attempted to learn how to use it in an effective way on numerous occasions, but I just cannot get I just cannot get and the biggest thing about it is that, you know, I often am in a situation where we've got, you know, a production set up and then I'm working on a separate thing, and yeah, I find keeping those two things separate while also synchronizing with 4 or 5 different computers to be frustrating. The way it does, you have to like check things out and then like stash them if you want to move somewhere else and do all this kind of stuff. Anyway, this is not, you know, chat tries to help me figure out how to use Git. But it's something that I want to learn how to use better. So I apologize if you are attempting to, if you attempt to join or attempt to contribute to this system and you find my updates to be not very useful to you. And or you find that I'm not doing things in a useful way. Anyway, I think that's all the stuff I wanted to talk about for the crop mover. Just remember to commit and push before leaving the PC. Yeah, but if I'm halfway through a thing, then I don't want to commit it. But then if I want to do something else, and anyway, I'm not going to get into my frustrations with how the paradigm of Git works, especially when you're like a single developer as opposed to like part of a team. So you right. So then you just have a bunch of work in progress commits. Anyway. So that's the main stuff I wanted to talk about. Let's see. Is there any other? Like I said, there's a whole range of little utilities that I've made that are of mixed usefulness. I guess I'd say they are how as in how actually widely useful they are. Varies a lot depending on certain circumstances and depending on what you're sort of looking for. That things that I've sort of made, again, kind of in the same way as the crop mover, but where's here, let me open up some. I'm not gonna this stuff isn't currently available because it'll probably just cause more problems than it solves, or that it helps. But as an example, where am I going to go here? I built this. Oh, you won't be able to, wait. Actually, yeah. Let me do one that will actually show up. I think this will work. Yeah. So, like, I built a thing that one of the things that happens that we do fairly often in when we're setting up things in Studio C is putting like borders around things. Like, say I've got this picture of Skies of Arcadia, and I want to put a border around it. How would I do that? How would I do that? It's one of the things I liked about XSplit. Is XSplit had a built-in make a 1 pixel filter that you could apply to things to make a border. So I made this little app that creates an object with the a certain pixel border around a thing, and then if I move the thing around, I can update it and move it to the right spot. But it's not. It's a little wonky. It doesn't work as well as I would like. I can make this a 15 pixel border. Boop. Again, something that would be far better if there was just some sort of filter or plugin for XSplit or something built into XSplit that would allow you to put a border around a source. There's various there's a couple things that I've seen to do borders in XSplit, but none of them are very good. Using XIF tool to get the image size and then creating a div below it. No, this is built into XSplit. So this is using using OBS WebSocket. All I'm doing is getting the size of the object using code borrowed from my crop mover thing. Actually, I'm getting the size of the object, and then I'm creating a color source below it of the correct dimensions. So this is all within. This is the only HTML part of this is the actual. I just have like a little controller app, which you can't see. Wait, let me screen capture it. There. That's what the little controller thing looks like. It's very small. All I do is, I can click on a thing, it tells me the size and whatever, and I can update it to 25 or 24, update. Or I move it and update and it moves. Yeah, there's things that can do borders with shaders, but all of those systems the shader thing has a limitation in that it can only operate within the borders of an object. Like it can't extend outside the edges of a particular object. Also, it also can't read like whether an object is cropped. So you have to see the whole thing, and then your object has to have like a transparency to it in order to give an area that the border can actually show through. So it's not that effective, unfortunately. What was the other one I had? Oh yeah, this one's here's another one that I made. Again, was for a it's sort of works quite well for certain circumstances, but not not as well as it could, I guess is the end. Where is it? So if I'll screen cap this as well. So this thing, I call this Nifty Layout Manager or Nifty Layout. And the idea with this is that, I can say I want a I want a 2x2 layout with this one in that corner. This is going to be weird because they don't have objects that are good shape, but gameplay in that corner, face cam there, and then this border box there, apply, and then it, puts them into that configuration. And then I can set the size of the gutter. It makes it bigger like that. Or I can be like, I want this to be a 2x1. Look, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a little bit similar. These are it's some of these tools we build are for Desert Bus obviously has its own very complex set of layout tools and stuff. Some of which I use for I have adapted. Joe Trollo did some really great work on Desert Bus layout tools. And I use some of the stuff that he developed in terms of how to scale things and things, and adapted it again. You would think that we could use a lot of the Desert Bus stuff for loading ready run, but the requirements for Desert Bus and loading ready run actually are quite different. So some of the stuff you can translate over, but a lot of the stuff doesn't quite translate in the same way. Right, yeah, and of course, Mango Pixel used a bunch of my overlay stuff for the game show overlays. Although I pity what you had to do to make that work, because that was one of those things where I sent it over. That this is why sometimes it's of medium helpfulness, shall we say, to open source things, or give your source, because you give your source to somebody else, but then you don't actually give them any explanation as to how it works, or suggestions to how to make it better, or keep them up to date with things you've changed. There's a bunch of stuff that are in the code that I gave to Mango Pixel that was not a good way to do it, but it was the way that I was having to do it. And of course they had to they were taking the stuff and kind of just looking at my code and trying to mess around with it and make it work, which is always awkward. So I apologize for that, and perhaps for future Desert Buses we can make the game show overlay control work better. And that's the source of that explanation. It's something that, it's a bit of a cop out, that, and I feel bad to sort of be like, I don't want to release my code because you sort of you're not ashamed of it, but you it's not sort of ready for scrutiny. And everyone's got code that they're not proud of. That's not necessarily a reason to not release it, but the thing that I find difficult is sort of, just if I just released the raw code that I've got that we use for a lot of things, it wouldn't work. It's it's looking for a server at a certain address that isn't there because that server is running here in the office and you don't have that server. And And if I gave you that server, it also wouldn't work because that server is dependent on a bunch of other stuff, and it's dependent on the particular environment that we're running here at the office. So making things in a way that is actually useful to somebody else is important. Yeah, various hard-coded thing. When you're only using it in one particular circumstance, hard coding things doesn't matter. When I was showing you installing this, actually, let me if I get rid of the when I was showing installing the crop mover thing, when you first boot it up, it'll ask you for your socket server and password. When I was making this for our internal use, I hard-coded the server and the password into the program because it was always being used here in the office, and it wasn't a big deal. So I quickly put together this little login screen so that it was like, wait, I should not actually send everybody our WebSocket server and password, even though theoretically it's not actually useful to you unless you're within the internal network of this office, in which case the security has probably been breached anyway. But it's still not a good thing to be doing. And telling people that you have to go and edit this file and add your login info to it isn't great either. So, I can just make a little, add a little thing that asks you for your username and password and then stores it in in the local storage, so that, the security of the WebSocket login is only really an issue if you are in a environment where people can access your, people can remotely access this particular thing. It is actually pretty cool though. You can, using OBS WebSocket, you can remotely control OBS, like not only the crop mover thing, but there's other utilities people have made that allow full remote control, either from your phone or from a Stream Deck or from another computer or all sorts of different things. There's cool things you can do to control stuff. That you can control things remotely, but obviously you don't want to generally open that up. Anyway, so I think that's all the stuff I wanted to talk about. Anyway, so let me actually just quickly write it in here. Is github.com/Paul-LRR/Nifty crop mover. I think let me just double check that is in fact yes. Oh yeah, of course. The other very, very important utility that I've made using OBS WebSocket and the little fun things is something that that you saw at the beginning of the stream there. Again, slightly wonky code, which is why it didn't work immediately. Which was something that I built for Desert Bus this year. If you happen to watch Zeta Shift on Desert Bus last year, which was the remote shift, when we were doing dance parties and stuff, I wanted something fun to do during dance parties. And so I made a little utility that I can do, cool little wah effects. Or this. All right. See, this is why it's expecting the object to be center aligned as opposed to top left aligned. Whoa. 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 See, when you are wait, faster. Okay, too fast. How about that? See, when you're making something for a specific purpose, as opposed to a more general utility for other people to use, you don't have to take into account so many different things. Wait, let's see if I can get this part to work. Yeah. See, fancy colors. In and out. Wait. There we go. Yeah. And spin. So I mean, if you look at the if you think about the control that you have, like the OBS WebSocket thing, you've got, you can, like I demonstrated with the crop mover, you can control the transform of an object, right? So I can rather than doing it for something useful like the crop mover, I can just have it as a sign function, which is useful for this kind of thing, because it, as the number goes up, the sign function goes between 0 and 1, or between -1 and +1, so it goes in and out. Wait, how about I do with just slight Dutch angle gaming? It just slowly rotates. I mean, I made a thing way back in the day. I think there's probably a recording of it somewhere where there's the creative came up on 18 Games and Counting, the show that James and I used to do, and I was all by myself. James wasn't around, and so I did a stream like this, and I did a thing where I connected. It was basically a color. This was using XSplit because that's what we were using back in the day, but the principle is the same. I had a color and a size shift connected to the audio, like the volume. I had a little HTML thing that could read the volume of the microphone. Which is a thing that's you can do these days, which is kind of nice. So you could have, so that it could be, adjusting the change the volume or change the size of an object and the color of the object depending on the volume that I was speaking at, right? So then you go like in and out. I kind of like the even slower. Where it's just like, it'd be good for like a horror stream or something, where it just is like slowly making you uncomfortable. Little flickers every now and then. Yeah, one with Heather, one. Yeah. Yeah, the one we did, the one that the creative that James and I did together was where we were there was we had that like the sewing kit for making a pair of panties. It did not go very well. The end result had probably more staples in it than one would want. But anyway, there's lots of fun things you can do with this kind of stuff. Most of it not actually useful. Anyway, thanks everybody. Let me switch back to the booth here. Thanks everybody for joining me. I'm going to I'm gonna go away now. Yeah, that was probably a little longer than it needed to be. We covered most of the actual interesting, all the actual stuff about this utility in the first 15 minutes or so, and the rest of that was just me going over it again and again. But anyway, if you want to check it out for yourself, feel free to go to that GitHub page and download it. I think it should be pretty easy to install for your own use. I'd be very interested to hear from you if you are, if you're using it yourself, if you are, if it's helpful, if you find it helpful, if you don't find it helpful, if there are features that you think could be added to it, no promises that would be added. If you are, if you have some JavaScript programming experience and you want to actually make changes to it, that's also fun. Feel free to either make suggestions or, even better, actually make those changes and submit a PR or fork it or whatever. That's always great. But in any case, I hope that some of you may find it useful. And thanks everybody for watching. And I will endeavor to do more of these in the future, which I think I probably said at the end of the last one 4 years ago. Yeah, we'll at least probably have something in the new Moonbase, because the tech setup for the new Moonbase will be probably fairly different from the current one. I mean, fundamentally, it'll probably be similar, based on similar principles, but the actual hardware connections and stuff will probably be new and different and fun. So anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.